Hi everybody, if you found yourself watching this video but haven't watched the previous videos in this series yet, I do recommend giving them a watch just for some context, but otherwise let's hop into things. Only one sage remains to be awakened at this point, and it's the first time in the game as Adult Link where we will have to tread entirely new ground. Navi gives us a nice hint saying that since Ganondorf is from the desert, we might find some clues there. Gerudo Desert was entirely inaccessible as young Link, as the Gerudo have a blockade in place, which I guess they removed by the time we come here as Adult Link. However, the bridge over the Gerudo Valley is actually broken, so we'll need to use Epona to jump the gap in a totally worrying but really awesome moment. Side mention here, but the Gerudo Valley music is a freaking banger. One of the best single pieces of music in the game, nay, the series. It's totally a song I can just jam out to anytime. Anyways, Muto here will tell us that his workers have all been imprisoned by the Gerudo, so he asks for your help saving them. We'll need to infiltrate the Gerudo fortress, find and free the 4 carpenters. Only thing is, if any of the Gerudo spot you, they'll throw you into this prison cell without disarming you for some reason. It's easy enough to deal with since you can just hookshot up and out of there, so it's more of an inconvenience than anything. Anyways, you shoot the Gerudo guards in the face to knock them unconscious and sneak around. When you find each carpenter, you'll have a short fight with a Gerudo guard who will drop a key you can use to free them. After finding all 4 carpenters, this Gerudo warrior, who I'm just going to refer to as Avail, after her Terminian counterpart, will appear and say that she's been watching Link sneak through the fortress and is impressed by his skill. Avail offers Link a membership to join the Gerudo tribe as an honorary sort of member, which gives us free access to the fortress, training grounds, archery range, and etc. Fun bit of trivia, but in the N64 version of the game, Avail's clothes will actually always reflect Link's, so if you change right in front of her, her clothes will change too. I always thought this was something of a reference to Zelda 1, in which Zelda's clothes actually did the same thing, but it's apparently just a glitch, which is why this no longer works in the 3DS version of the game, as well as apparently some PAL versions. Anyways, if you want to do this side content, you can. In particular, I recommend getting the ice arrows from the Gerudo training grounds. Not that you actually need them for anything, they're entirely optional, but totally just fun to have. If you do it now, there's one key that you actually can't get without the silver gauntlets, but you will still have enough to get the ice arrows. Anyways, now the Gerudo guards will open the gate into the desert for you. You can trek through the haunted wasteland by closely following these flagpoles, and then by following this friendly Poe. And eventually, you'll come out of the sandstorm and see the desert colossus itself. A huge statue of the sand goddess, which actually houses the spirit temple itself. However, if you try to go into the temple, you can't actually do anything. You'll need to go back out, learn the Requiem of Spirit from Sheik, so that you can warp back here as Child Link and enter the dungeon 7 years in the past. Oh man, that music. Its opening is dramatic, it's thoughtful, and I really want to talk more about this song, but I almost feel like my lack of musical know-how just wouldn't do it justice. But that said, it's actually so perfect for this dungeon. I mentioned before that my favorite dungeon in the game is the Forest Temple, and it still is, but this one is a really close second. The Spirit Temple lives up to its name in a lot of ways, and I think it's one of the dungeons in the game that explores its themes on a much deeper level. Then again, there's only so deep you can go with a theme like fire and water compared to a theme like spirit. The Spirit Medallion, and by extension the symbol of the spirit element, bears a close resemblance to the real-life yin and yang symbol. This symbol symbol represents the duality of the world and balance in this duality. So in a way, the spirit symbol in the Zelda universe could be interpreted as a duality and balance in one's own spirit. The game actually talks about balance in people's spirit quite a bit, such as when referring to the balance of one's heart if they attempt to take possession of the Triforce. This theme of duality is implemented in almost every aspect of the dungeon's design as well. There are 2 dungeon items, 2 sand goddess statues, one inside and one outside. You explore the dungeon in 2 halves, first as child and then as adult Link. The map layout has a great deal of symmetry, mirroring itself in 2 halves. There are puzzles that use light, especially with the mirror shield, light and dark being a big part of the yin-yang duality. Even the boss fight itself explores duality by putting you against a literal pair of twins. The temple's themes also run opposite that of the Shadow Temple, whereas the Shadow Temple had us pretty much in friendly territory and yet was a nightmarish, hostile place that showed us the darker side of Hyrule's royal family, showing us the bad that the good side is capable of. Here is the opposite. The Spirit Temple is a temple built by the Gerudo. We are told that Ganondorf and his followers have been using it as a sort of base of operations. So really, we're in the heart of enemy territory, and yet the temple has a rather peaceful, tranquil atmosphere. I mean, it's still a dungeon with threats and danger and all that, but that danger isn't built into the architecture itself. So we get a glimpse here of something good that can come out of a bad place. In that sense, these last 2 dungeons are a duality, a balance in themselves. Let's also keep in mind that up until this point, all we've known about the Gerudo in this game is that their King Ganondorf is a pretty bad dude, and that the rest of them are known for being thieves. Yet, here we see a more thoughtful, spiritual side to the Gerudo, and that is especially embodied in Nabooru. We meet Nabooru right here in the temple's foyer. She herself is also part of a duality, a counterbalance to Ganondorf. Nabooru and Ganondorf are both leadership figures among the Gerudo. We heard about the exalted Nabooru from Avail earlier, but where Ganondorf is this cutthroat, power-hungry, brutal figure, Nabooru is compassionate. She can be a bit coy with you in her dialogue, but she is by no means evil. In fact, she is appalled that Ganondorf would steal from women and children and go as far as killing people, and so she plans to rebel against him. And that's where this dungeon really kicks off. As Child Link, we can crawl through this space in the foyer, so Nabooru asks that we sneak in to find one of the dungeon's treasures, the silver gauntlets, and bring it back to her. Once we defeat all the enemies here, we'll be faced with 3 paths. The middle door, which is through a small crawl space, is locked. The 2 side paths actually loop back around, so I like to just go clockwise through these rooms. You can tell right away that this dungeon means business, as you'll be fighting harder enemies than you've ever had to face as Child Link, aside from bosses. Right off the bat here, for example, a Stalfos drops in on you, which is the first time you'll have to fight one of these guys as young Link. You can use your boomerang to hit this switch and make a bridge through this room. Then you can use Din's Fire to defeat the Anubis in the second room and pass on through. Though if you don't have Din's Fire for some reason, or you're out of magic power, you can carefully lure him into the right spot and activate the switch to set him on fire. But it's so much easier just to use Din's Fire. You'll need to collect the silver rupees in this third room, which will open up the fence in the middle of the room and create a bridge across. Then you can light these torches, which will cause this chest to drop down. Opening the chest will give us our first key. Now that we've been looped back, we can crawl through that central crawl space and spend that key on the middle door. This next hallway will take us up a climbable wall to the second floor. There's some enemies to fight here, most notably the Lizalfos that ambush you. You'll need to use bomb shoes to destroy this rock on the wall, which will shine sunlight onto this sun switch and open the door. Though bomb shoes are readily available throughout most of the game, especially if you found all of the treasure chests back in the bottom of the well, still, if you don't have any at this point for some reason, you can hit this switch to reveal a chest with, you guessed it, bomb shoes inside. This door brings us to the large central room with this huge sand goddess statue. I love the look of this room, to be honest. The Gerudo text scrawled across the walls, the sand goddess towering over you, and that wonderful symmetry with these balconies. Make sure to push this Artmo statue down onto the switch below, which opens the door directly above you on the top floor of this room. While you're here, make sure to drop down to the center of this room, light these torches to make a treasure chest appear, and grab yourself the map. Unfortunately, there isn't anything more that Child Link can do here, so we'll need to head to the top and head through that door that we just unlocked. Next, head through this small staircase and into the sunblock room. This room has 3 puzzles in one. It's great. The first and easiest one, pull this sunblock into the ray of sunlight to unlock the doors. Then destroy all the BMOS in this room and you'll be able to collect the silver rupees, which will light one of the torches. Now light the rest of the torches and a treasure chest will be revealed. Inside the chest is a small key. Now we just head through that last hallway, spend that key we just earned, and we'll be in this western throne room. Sitting motionless on the throne is a bulky armored figure. This is our mid-boss, an Iron Knuckle. Iron Knuckles are seriously tough. They take a lot of hits and they deal a lot of damage. 4 hearts. That, and they are seriously aggressive with their attacks. The fact that we're significantly weaker as Child Link doesn't help matters, since the Kokiri sword only deals half the damage the Master Sword does, which itself only deals half the damage that the Big Goron sword does. So depending on how you're playing, you might be operating on only 25% of the damage output that you're used to. That said, you can use your small stature to your advantage in this fight. As the Iron Knuckle swings their axe around aggressively, if you stay close and duck, you can pretty much avoid all of their attacks this way. Then when the opening presents itself, you strike. Make sure to take the route of avoidance though, because using your shield to block is just not even an option. Those axe swings are too powerful and will send you flying back. This is definitely the toughest mid-boss fight that we've faced up until now, and it's awesome. Once you've defeated the Iron Knuckle, head through this door, which takes us outside to one of the balconies. Well, I say balconies, but it's really one of the hands of the Desert Colossus. There is a treasure chest here, which has the silver gauntlets that we promised to get for Nabooru. However, once we get them, we're interrupted by some voices, and this cutscene plays. Turns out that these 2 witches have discovered Nabooru, so they kidnap her and suck her into this vortex thing. It's a bit unclear what's happened to her, but one thing is for certain, and that is that Nabooru is out of the picture. Dang. At this point, we've done everything that we can here as Child Link, effectively having cleared out the entire western half of this dungeon. So all we can do is travel back to the future. As Adult Link, we can now wear the silver gauntlets, which allows us to move or lift heavier objects than normal. So now we head back to the Spirit Temple. Of course, we can't enter the same path as before since we're too big to fit into that crawl space. But with our new silver gauntlets, we can instead push this massive block and open up the path on the eastern side of the foyer, which again has 3 doors, just like its western counterpart. Hitting the switch on the ceiling will unlock the 2 side doors, and again, we'll need to find a key for the middle door. Heading into door number 1, we have a pretty straightforward puzzle. Play Zelda's Lullaby while standing on this Triforce symbol, and we can hookshot across to the treasure chest that appears, and get ourselves the compass. Heading through door number 2 from the BMOS room will bring us to this rolling boulder half-pipe room. Collect the silver rupees once again to unlock the door. Behind the door is possibly the most pointless empty room, which has a treasure chest with a key. Just watch out for the like. Now we can spend that key to unlock the 3rd door, which just like before brings us up a hallway with a climbable wall so we can ascend to the 2nd floor. And just like its counterpart on the western half of the dungeon, we have a hole in the wall with a sunbeam shining in. But the sun switch isn't placed right under the ray of light. So in order to proceed, we'll need to rotate this mirror to reflect the light onto the correct switch. This unlocks the door and we are back in the central room. Technically, if you wanted to, you can access the child half of the dungeon from here, but there isn't really much to do there. There is also an optional door in the center of the bottom floor in this room, which we can open by using the Megaton hammer on this switch in the top corner. This will simply create a shortcut back to the entrance, however, so I usually just don't bother with it. You'll want to get onto the statue's left hand, which you'll notice has the Triforce symbol on it, and play Zelda's Lullaby once again, which will drop a treasure chest onto the statue's other hand. You can hookshot over and you'll find a key which we can use to unlock the eastern door on the top floor of this room. Is this feeling familiar? This first room on the 3rd floor has some precarious walkways. You can use fire arrows to easily dispatch the Anubises in this room, which will unlock one of the 2 doors. Heading into the next room, we'll see a sun switch that we can't use, and this push switch that opens this door. This puzzle is a bit tricky because the switch has to be held down in order for the door to be opened, so you'll need to bait one of these Armos into stepping on the switch for you, and quickly head into the door before they step off of it. This takes us into the Eastern Throne Room, which has us fight another Iron Knuckle, just like before. His attacks are super powerful again, but as adult Link, we can't use the same tactic of ducking under his attacks like we did as Child Link. So instead, I prefer to just rush him with the big Goron sword and try to take him down as quickly as possible. Just like before, this takes us out to the other side of the statue on the temple's exterior, where we'll find another treasure chest, this time with the dungeon's second item, the Mirror Shield. Not only is this useful for those light puzzles, but it's also stylish as heck. Now we can go back into the previous room, use the Mirror Shield to reflect this ray of light, and activate the Sun Switch, which unlocks the other door, through which we'll find another key. Now we can head back into the Anubis room and unlock that second door. This is the only part of the dungeon that really deviates greatly from its Western counterpart, as it takes us up farther than we could ever progress as Child Link. There's this climbable wall that shifts in place, and climbing it is pretty tricky, so I instead recommend using the hook shot to just zip up to the top. Quick mention here, but opposite the door at the top of this room is this platform with some hearts on it. It just feels so out of place to me. The model for this platform was clearly taken from the water temple, and for some reason it even has the water reflecting effect over it, despite there being no water here. It's weird. Now we're on the 4th floor, which only consists of a few small rooms. First thing we'll want to do is play Zelda's Lullaby to unlock this first door in front of us. This room almost feels like it was repurposed from the fire temple or something, having these fake doors that we can break with the hammer and these fire slugs, and of course that fire. The puzzle here is simple enough. Shoot the eye switch to make a platform appear, hook shot up to the platform, press the button to extinguish the flames, and you can grab the boss key from the treasure chest. Now if we head back into the hallway and into the next room, we'll find ourselves in this large mirror chamber. You can prod the switch through the gate to open the door in the adjacent room. There's a Lizalfos and some cool light reflecting puzzles. First off is a sun switch at the start of this room, which drops a treasure chest with some bombs in it. Then this section where the sunlight shines down on this mirror. You need to bomb the wall here, then rotate the mirror, which reflects to another mirror, which you'll also want to rotate so that it aims through the gate and back into the large mirror room. Now the sunlight should be reflecting directly onto this large mirror, so we can stand underneath it, use the mirror shield, and activate this sun switch. This causes the entire platform to lower down into the central room, taking us face to face with the statue of the sand goddess. If we use the mirror shield to reflect light onto the statue, its face will basically disintegrate, revealing a hidden door. We can hookshot across and spend the boss key to open this door. But it's not quite the boss fight yet. We'll find those two old witches again, Kume and Kotake, standing over another Iron Knuckle. They command the Iron Knuckle to attack you before disappearing. This particular Iron Knuckle is actually stronger than the previous two that we faced, but even still we can use the same tactic to quickly defeat them, only to reveal that it was actually a brainwashed Naburu under the armor. Twin Rova appear again, noting that she is back to normal. They comment that they should brainwash her again, but when she tries to make a run for it, they zap her. It's unclear if they teleported her away or if she's dead, but once again, poor Naburu is out of the picture too soon. Alright, we can head into the door behind her, down the hallway, and into the boss room. The boss room, as usual, seems empty when we first enter. The room has 5 raised platforms, one larger one in the center of the room and smaller ones on each side. When we climb up to the top of the central platform, Twin Rova will appear through portals in the ground, which represent their respective elements. Kume with the power of fire, and Kotake with the power of ice. These two make for a really interesting boss fight, since this is basically the first time in the game in which the boss fight is not really against a big monster, but instead 2 powerful sorcerers. They also have a lot more personality than previous bosses, as they threaten you, talk to each other, and even laugh at you if you take damage. Possessing opposite powers means they're also vulnerable to the other's attacks, so the only way to inflict damage on either of them is to use the mirror shield to reflect one of their attacks at the other one. Sounds simple enough, right? But they fly around the room a lot, and so being at an optimal position in which both are in view so that you can reasonably angle these attacks can be tricky. I do sort of feel like there's a missed opportunity here to have been able to use the fire and ice arrows on them, but I understand that from a design and thematic standpoint, they wanted to make sure you'd have to use the mirror shield. After landing enough successful attacks, Twinrova will decide to get serious and do some sort of weird fusion dance to become one being. Not quite sure how that works, or how two old ladies look younger when combined, but hey, don't you wink at me like that. For this second phase, rather than just reflecting the attacks back at them, you'll need to use the mirror shield to charge up 3 consecutive attacks from the same element. The mirror shield will store the energy from the charge, and after 3, you can launch it back to ground her. Once grounded, you can attack with your sword. Just like with Bongo Bongo, if you crouch stab with the Big Goron sword, you can defeat them absurdly quickly. I find that strangely, this second phase of the battle is actually easier than the first, but oh well. Once defeated, Kume and Kotake will appear again, and oh dang, they are for real dead. They argue with each other all the way up into the afterlife. We get our heart container, and back at the Chamber of Sages, we are reunited with Naburu. No surprise there, but she is awakened as the Sage of Spirit. Fantastic. So, that's the dungeon. As I mentioned earlier, the Spirit Temple is one of my favorite dungeons in this game, second only to the Forest Temple. It's a perfect balance of difficulty in its navigation and its combat challenges. Its themes of spirituality and especially duality are explored in every facet of this dungeon's design, from the statues that come in pairs, the opposing factions within the Gerudo, right down to the dungeon boss itself. It's the only dungeon in the game where the time travel theme that's, in the game's title is explored fully, since you have to enter as both child and adult Link. You could make the argument that the Shadow Temple does the same, but my personal headcanon aside, technically the bottom of the well is a separate area. Here, there is an actual overlap in the very rooms within the dungeon that you can enter in both time periods. Oh, and that sweet symmetry. I know I keep mentioning it, but it really helps this dungeon not only feel like an actual temple, but it helps that duality theme come to fruition, since the child and adult halves of the dungeon mirror each other. Even more fitting then that one of the dungeon items is a literal mirror. Beyond all of that, it's a wonderful change of pace. The Gerudo have always fascinated me with how rich and fleshed out their culture is in this series, and that is on full display here in the Spirit Temple. I also love how the dungeon introduces these light puzzles and gradually expands on the concept by making these puzzles more and more complicated, until you're literally reflecting a single ray of sunlight off of multiple mirrors. It's good stuff. My small list of gripes: I hate these treasure chests with ice traps inside. It's just a nuisance. There's also a couple of elements here that feel out of place, like that one platform that looks like it was just ripped from the Water Temple, and this room which feels more like it belongs in the Fire Temple. I also kind of wish that the Gerudo typography seen throughout the dungeon was a bit more meaningful. A lot of the text seen throughout the series is actually translatable, but here in the Spirit Temple, where there is text scrawled across huge parts of the dungeon, it's usually either gibberish or just the literal alphabet repeating itself. Missed opportunity. Why develop an entire fictional language just to spell out the alphabet on the walls? But aside from those very minor things, this dungeon is just downright wonderful, mysterious, and full of details. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for when the next one comes out. I also just wanted to say a quick thanks to those who supported me on Patreon, particularly those who supported at the cheese tier or higher, which includes Brenda, Tetra, Callie, and Finley. Thank you so much again, you guys, and I will catch you next time. Bye bye!